After the end of the Civil War, more than 3 million people of color in the South had been freed from slavery. Faced with limited skills, as much as legal barriers intended to restrict their economic advancement, opportunities for people of color beyond the agricultural sector were often difficult to come by. One group of freed women in Gordonsville, Virginia, translated skills passed down from their enslaved ancestors into a successful business model that would earn them a place in history. Gordonsville in the late 1860s was a busy transfer point where two different railroad lines met. Travel by train in the 19th century was not as comfortable as nostalgia might suggest, for this was long before the days of such luxuries as climate control and onboard restrooms. The only opportunity for refreshment was when the train stopped briefly at a station, like that which once stood here in Gordonsville. It wasn't long before a group of women observed hungry railroad passengers and a business opportunity. Written records detailing precisely how their venture began are sparse, but it is clear that by the early 1870s, the women had earned a reputation for selling refreshments through the windows of the passenger coaches. Platters of fried chicken, ham, and sandwiches, along with pies and cakes, fruit, and pitchers of hot tea and coffee floated from one window to the next, offering invaluable respite for hungry passengers on the move. In order to avoid the whirlpool of passengers and luggage on the platform, the waiter carriers, as they came to be known, conducted their business on the opposite side of the trains. By the late 19th century, some travelers on the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway were planning their journeys especially through Gordonsville so they could experience the celebrated waiter carriers and their legendary cooking. Business was lucrative, so lucrative in fact that their profits allowed many of the women to purchase their own homes. This degree of economic security was not only rare for people of color, but was also exceptional, as few women of any race in the 19th century could be considered financially independent. People in other towns throughout Virginia copied their business model, but they never escaped comparison to the women in Gordonsville, which had earned a reputation as the fried chicken center of the world. On an average day, each waiter carrier could sell some 25 chickens, along with several hundred sandwiches, and just as many baked goods. Despite their fame and income, life for the waiter carriers wasn't easy. Wood stoves lacking precise temperature controls made cooking as much an art form as it was science. And good cooking was a highly specialized skill that took years to master. Business demanded the women wait for the trains day and night, and in all manner of weather. Keeping food and beverage hot in the winter was no easy task, and in the summertime the trays of food had to be carefully wrapped in nets and oiled paper to ward off flies while waiting for the next train. The women themselves were sometimes harassed by passengers, who were also known to pilfer items from their platters without paying for them. One waiter carrier, refusing to be defeated, tracked down one man who stole from her platter. But the women, for their steely reserve, were not unkind. They were known for their generosity, and gave refreshment to the hard-working train crews, and to hungry people, both black and white, who didn't have any money. Business for the waiter carriers began to change around the end of the First World War. Timing and technology had been the forces that made the waiter carriers, and those same forces would also be the waiter carriers' undoing. By this time, Chesapeake and Ohio services had come to incorporate dining cars into their consists, and the advent of climate control also meant that passenger coaches now had plate glass windows, which were not designed to be opened.
The walls are refreshing light shades of early American colonial, which would have to be kept clean if genuine air conditioning didn't keep them that way. But
changes in government regulations pertaining to trackside food vendors did little to aid their predicament. Further, a new restaurant that also opened near the station obtained rights that excluded the independent waiter carriers. Restaurants and hotels in Gordonsville continued selling the legendary chicken, but by the 1930s, the last 6 of the waiter carriers had retired, citing rising food costs and difficulties associated with old age. There was simply no longer a viable means of continuing this unique institution that had lasted for generations. Gordonsville's last passenger service called in July 1969, and the station was demolished a few years later. Were it not for a nearby historical marker, few would ever guess that there was once a busy station here, buzzing with hard-working women and the smell of their legendary food. The women who worked as waiter carriers utilized their cooking ability and business acumen to forge a living when people of color had few opportunities. In the process, their business became an institution that was respected far and wide. Many of the waiter carriers earned a degree of financial independence and empowerment that few women or people of color possessed at that time. Depending on who one asks, Gordonsville, Virginia is the birthplace of fast food chicken as we know it today. An annual fried chicken contest endures as a testament to this legacy. This is all thanks to a determined group of women with a good idea and a little bit of luck.